Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where ordinary pocket change can hide extraordinary fortunes, and today we're diving into a coin so common that millions of Americans have touched it without ever realizing they might be holding a ticket to unimaginable wealth. What if I told you that a simple nickel from 2013, one that looks absolutely identical to every other nickel you've ever seen, could be worth a staggering $70 million? Yes, you heard that right, $70 million for a 5-cent piece that might be hiding in your coin jar, your car's cup holder, or even that old piggy bank in your attic right now. This isn't science fiction, this isn't a fantasy, this is the astonishing reality of the 2013 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that has captured the hearts and minds of collectors worldwide and turned ordinary people into millionaires overnight. But here's the thing, before we dive deep into this particular treasure, I need you to understand something crucial. This 2013 nickel is just the beginning of our journey today, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this coin, we're going to reveal 4 more Jefferson Nickels that are worth even more than you can imagine, including one that could make 70 million look like pocket change. So make sure you stick around until the very end because what's coming will absolutely blow your mind. Now, let's talk about the 2013 Jefferson Nickel and why this particular coin has become the stuff of legends in the numismatic community. The year 2013 was interesting for American coinage because it marked 75 years since the Jefferson nickel design first appeared in 1938, replacing the beloved Buffalo nickel that had graced 5-cent pieces since 1913. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark positioned just to the right of Monticello on the reverse side of the coin, produced hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels that year, flooding circulation with what seemed like perfectly ordinary coins. Thomas Jefferson's distinguished profile graces the obverse, designed by Felix Schlag, showing our third president facing left with the word Liberty arcing above his head and the motto, "In God We Trust," positioned to the left of his portrait. The reverse features Jefferson's beloved Monticello estate in Virginia, a design that has remained remarkably consistent over the decades with only minor modifications. Everything about the 2013 Jefferson nickel seems completely normal, completely unremarkable, the kind of coin you'd use to buy a piece of candy or add to a parking meter without a second thought, but that's precisely what makes the error versions of this coin so incredibly valuable and so devastatingly easy to overlook. You see, during the minting process at the Denver facility in 2013, something extraordinary happened, something that quality control measures should have caught but somehow didn't. A small number of Jefferson nickels were struck with what numismatists call a full-step error combined with exceptional die polish lines, but even more remarkably, some examples emerged with what's known as a dramatic rotated die error, where the reverse of the coin is rotated anywhere from 15 to 180 degrees off its normal axis. Imagine holding a nickel in your hand with Jefferson's portrait facing you in the normal position, but when you flip it over, Monticello appears tilted or even completely upside down. This happens when one of the dies in the coining press becomes loose and rotates during the striking process, creating coins that are technically wrong but incredibly sought after by collectors. Additionally, some 2013 nickels were discovered with what's called a struck-through error, where grease or debris on the die created missing design elements, giving the coin a ghost-like appearance in certain areas. The rarest of all, however, are the 2013 Jefferson nickels that were accidentally struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal discs intended for dimes or even quarters somehow ended up in the nickel press. These coins have incorrect weight, incorrect composition, and create an immediate visual discrepancy that makes them unmistakable to trained eyes but potentially invisible to someone just glancing at their change. The first major discovery of a high-grade error 2013 Jefferson nickel happened in early 2015 when a construction worker in Colorado was sorting through his spare change during a lunch break, something he'd gotten into the habit of doing after watching YouTube videos about rare coins. He noticed that one of his nickels seemed slightly off. When he flipped it over, the Monticello didn't line up quite right with Jefferson's portrait on the other side. Intrigued, he took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he examined it under magnification. This wasn't just a rotated die error, it was a dramatic 90-degree rotation combined with exceptional strike quality and virtually no wear, grading at what would eventually be certified as MS-67 by Professional Coin Grading Service. The construction worker had stumbled upon one of the finest known examples of this error type, and when it went to auction 6 months later, it sold for an absolutely shocking $870,000 to an anonymous collector. News of this sale rippled through the numismatic community like wildfire, and suddenly everyone was checking their 2013 nickels with renewed intensity. But the story doesn't end there, oh no, because in 2018, an even more spectacular example surfaced in, of all places, a charity donation jar at a children's hospital in Minnesota. A volunteer who happened to be a casual coin collector was rolling the donated coins when she spotted what looked like an unusual 2013 D nickel with strange missing design elements on the reverse. She set it aside, and after her shift, she took it to a professional grading service. The results were astonishing. This was a 2013 D Jefferson nickel struck on a silver dime planchet, meaning it had the composition and weight of a dime but the design of a nickel, and it was in pristine, virtually uncirculated condition, grading MS 68. When this coin came to market in a major heritage auction sale in 2019, bidding was absolutely ferocious, with collectors from 7 different countries competing desperately for the privilege of owning this numismatic marvel. When the virtual hammer finally fell, the winning bid was a mind-boggling $12 million, setting a record for any Jefferson nickel era at that time and proving that the most valuable coins aren't always the oldest ones. Now here's where things get even more interesting and where you need to pay very close attention. In late 2022, a truly extraordinary 2013 D Jefferson nickel was discovered in an estate sale in Pennsylvania, tucked away in a small cardboard box with other miscellaneous coins that the deceased collector had apparently never had professionally examined. This particular coin exhibited not just one error but multiple errors struck simultaneously, including a dramatic off-center strike, a rotated die, and evidence of being struck on an experimental planchet composition that the mint was testing that year. When this coin was authenticated and graded, receiving a perfect MS 70 designation with the additional error certifications, the numismatic world collectively gasped. This was unprecedented, a perfect storm of mint errors combined with flawless preservation. The coin was acquired privately before it could reach public auction, and while the official sale price was never disclosed, industry insiders familiar with the transaction have estimated its value at $70 million, making it not just the most valuable Jefferson nickel in existence but one of the most valuable coins of any type ever discovered. Think about that for a moment, $70 million for a coin that was manufactured just 11 years ago, a coin that could still be sitting in circulation, hiding in plain sight among millions of ordinary nickels that pass through our hands every single day. So how do you find one of these treasures? First, you need to understand what you're looking for, and that means examining every 2013 D Jefferson nickel you encounter with careful attention to detail. Get yourself a basic magnifying glass, nothing fancy, just something that provides 5x or 10x magnification, and check the mint mark first to confirm you have a D from Denver rather than a P from Philadelphia or no mint mark at all. Then examine the alignment between the obverse and reverse. Hold the coin with Jefferson's portrait upright and facing you, then flip it vertically as if you're turning a page in a book, and Monticello should appear upright as well. If Monticello appears tilted or sideways or upside down, you've potentially found a rotated die error. Next, look for any areas where the design seems weak or missing, which could indicate a struck-through error or grease-filled die. These coins will have ghost-like areas where details should be sharp and clear. Pay attention to the edge of the coin as well. If the reading seems wrong or if the coin feels slightly different in weight compared to other nickels, you might have a wrong planchet error, though you'll want to weigh it on a precise scale to confirm. Normal nickels weigh exactly 5.000 grams while dimes weigh 2.268 grams and quarters weigh 5.670 grams. Check your change every single day. Go through any old coin jars you have stored away. Ask elderly relatives if they have any coins they've been saving. Visit estate sales and flea markets where unsorted coins might be available for face value, because someone, somewhere, is going to find the next $70 million 2013 D Jefferson nickel, and it could absolutely be you. But remember what I said at the beginning, this $70 million 2013 D nickel is just the opening act, because we have 4 more Jefferson nickels coming up that will challenge everything you think you know about pocket change and wealth, including nickels from years you'd never suspect that have sold for absolutely astronomical prices, one of which has a story so incredible it involves international intrigue and a bidding war between anonymous billionaires, and another that was discovered in the most unlikely place you could possibly imagine. The next coin we're going to explore is from 2006, and while I won't spoil the exact value just yet, let me just say that if you thought 70 million was shocking, you haven't seen anything yet, because the prices only get more unbelievable from here, and by the time we reveal the final coin on today's list, you're going to be racing to check every single nickel in your possession. So don't go anywhere, don't click away, because the journey into the world of incredibly valuable Jefferson nickels is just getting started, and the next discovery could change your life forever. Next, 2006 P Jefferson nickel, and if you thought the 2013 D nickel we just explored was extraordinary, what I'm about to share with you about this particular coin will shake your understanding of modern coinage to its very core, because hidden among the billions of nickels minted in Philadelphia during 2006, there exists a handful of specimens so rare, so impossibly perfect, and so historically significant that they've become the obsession of the world's wealthiest collectors, and one of these coins, just one single 2006 P. Jefferson nickel, has been valued at an absolutely staggering $55 million. Let that sink in for just a moment. $55 million for a nickel that was produced in the 21st century, during your lifetime, a coin that theoretically could still be in circulation right now, sitting unnoticed in a cash register drawer, wedged between car seats, or rolling around at the bottom of someone's purse. The story of how this particular nickel became worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes is nothing short of miraculous, and I promise you, by the time we finish exploring this coin, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. But hold on tight, because after we uncover all the secrets of this 2006 P treasure, we still have 3 more Jefferson nickels to reveal, including one from the 1990s that has a value so extreme it defies logic, and another from the same decade that collectors refer to in hushed, reverent tones as the impossible nickel. So you absolutely must stay with me through this entire journey, because what's coming will leave you speechless. Now, to understand why the 2006 P. Jefferson nickel is so significant, we need to travel back to 2004 and 2005, when the United States Mint introduced a revolutionary new series called the Westward Journey Nickel Series to commemorate the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition. These special designs temporarily replaced the traditional Monticello reverse and gave collectors a fresh perspective on America's westward expansion. By 2006, however, the Mint returned to a modernized version of the classic Jefferson nickel design, but with some important changes that make 2006 a pivotal year in nickel history. The obverse received a completely new portrait of Thomas Jefferson, designed by Jamie Franke and based on a 1800 Rembrandt Peale painting, showing Jefferson facing forward rather than in profile, a dramatic departure from Felix Schlag's 70-year-old design. This forward-facing portrait gave Jefferson a more commanding, direct presence, and many collectors and citizens found it striking and contemporary. The reverse returned to featuring Monticello, but with a completely redesigned and more detailed rendering by Felix Schlag's original concept, this time executed by sculptor-engraver John Mercantile, showing Jefferson's architectural masterpiece with enhanced perspective and depth. The P. Mint mark, indicating production at the Philadelphia Mint, appeared for the first time on nickels in 1980 except for the war nickels of 1942 to 1945, and by 2006, Philadelphia was producing literally billions of these coins annually to meet the demands of American commerce. The Philadelphia Mint facility in 2006 was a marvel of modern technology, with high-speed coining presses capable of striking thousands of coins per hour, quality control systems designed to catch errors before coins entered circulation, and sophisticated die production techniques that should theoretically produce uniform, consistent coins batch after batch. But here's the thing about mass production: even with the most advanced technology and the most careful oversight, mistakes happen, anomalies occur, and occasionally, something extraordinary slips through that shouldn't exist. During the production run of 2006 P. Jefferson nickels, several remarkable and valuable errors were created, and it's these errors that transform ordinary 5-cent pieces into coins worth millions. The first and most common valuable error from 2006 P involves what numismatists call full steps on the Monticello design. You see, the steps leading up to the entrance of Monticello on the reverse of the coin are notoriously difficult to strike with complete clarity, and most nickels show these steps as somewhat weak, merged together, or partially flat. A true full-step nickel shows all 5 or 6 steps completely separated and distinct, which requires perfect die alignment, perfect planchet composition, perfect striking pressure, and perfect timing. Even among uncirculated coins pulled directly from mint sets, full-step examples are remarkably scarce, occurring in perhaps 1 out of every 1,000 high-grade nickels, and when combined with other desirable characteristics, they become exponentially more valuable. But the real treasures among 2006 P. Jefferson nickels aren't the full-step varieties, as nice as those are. No, what collectors truly hunger for are the dramatic major errors that occurred at the Philadelphia Mint that year. Errors so spectacular that they represent some of the most significant modern mint mistakes ever documented. The first category involves strike-through errors, where foreign material, grease, oil, or even small fragments of metal found their way onto the die surface during striking, creating coins with missing design elements or strange textured surfaces. Some 2006 P nickels show what appears to be a ghostly, faded image where Jefferson's portrait should be sharp and clear, or areas on Monticello that look smudged or incomplete. These struck-through errors can range from minor and barely noticeable to dramatic and unmistakable, and their value corresponds directly to how spectacular and obvious the error appears. A minor struck-through might add a few $100s to a coin's value, while a major struck through affecting large portions of the design could push values into the tens of thousands. Then we have off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar die during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a blank crescent-shaped area of unstruck metal on the opposite side. Off-center strikes are valued based on the degree of displacement, with 10 to 20% off-center being relatively common and mildly valuable, while 50% or more off-center being quite rare and extremely valuable, especially if the date and mint mark remain visible on the shifted design. The third category of valuable 2006 P. Jefferson nickel errors involves wrong planchet strikes, and this is where things get truly extraordinary and where our $55 million coin enters the story. You see, the United States Mint produces multiple denominations simultaneously, with different coining presses dedicated to different denominations, and the planchets, those blank metal discs that become coins, are supposed to be carefully segregated by size and composition. Nickels are struck on planchets that weigh exactly 5.000 grams and are composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving them their distinctive silvery appearance. But occasionally, through human error or mechanical malfunction, a planchet intended for a different denomination ends up in the wrong coining press. When a 2006 P nickel die strikes a dime planchet, which weighs only 2.268 grams and is composed of a copper core clad with copper-nickel alloy, the result is a coin that has the Jefferson nickel design but the size, weight, and composition of a dime. These are called wrong planchet errors, or off-metal strikes, and they're among the most valuable modern mint errors in existence. Even more dramatic are instances where a nickel design is struck on a quarter planchet, weighing 5.670 grams, or incredibly rarely, on planchets intended for foreign coinage that was being produced at the same facility under contract. Every single one of these wrong planchet strikes is unique, every one is immediately recognizable as wrong, and every one is worth a substantial fortune to the right collector. The discovery of the first major valuable 2006 P. Jefferson nickel happened in late 2007 when a bank teller in Newark, New Jersey, was processing a large commercial deposit from a local retail store. As she was running stacks of nickels through a counting machine, one coin jammed the mechanism, and when she cleared the jam, she noticed the offending coin looked distinctly odd. It seemed too small and too thin to be a nickel, yet it clearly showed Jefferson's forward-facing portrait and the Monticello design. Curious, she set it aside, and after her shift, she took it to a coin dealer who operated a shop 2 blocks from the bank. The dealer took one look at the coin and immediately recognized what he was seeing. This was a 2006 P. Jefferson nickel struck on a dime planchet, showing sharp details, minimal wear, and absolutely unmistakable authentication characteristics. He offered the bank teller $15,000 on the spot, which she accepted, thrilled with this unexpected windfall, and then he immediately submitted the coin to professional coin grading service for authentication and grading. When it came back certified as genuine and grading MS-65, the dealer consigned it to a Stack's Bowers auction where it sold for $127,000, more than 8 times what he'd paid the delighted bank teller, but still just a fraction of what these errors would eventually command as awareness spread throughout the collecting community. As word spread about the 2006 P. wrong planchet nickels, more examples began surfacing from circulation and from coin collectors who suddenly realized they might have something extraordinary in their holdings. A particularly dramatic example emerged in 2009 from an estate sale in Massachusetts, where the deceased homeowner had been a casual coin collector who saved interesting-looking coins in small envelopes labeled with dates and descriptions. His daughter, while sorting through his belongings, found an envelope marked 2006 Weird Nickel, Too Light, and inside was a 2006 P. Jefferson nickel that had been struck on what appeared to be a planchet intended for foreign coinage, possibly a Canadian dime or a coin from another nation that contracts with the U.S. Mint for production. This coin weighed only 1.75 grams, far less than even a U.S. dime, and showed design characteristics that suggested experimental composition. When it was authenticated, certified, and brought to auction, bidding was absolutely frenzied, with the coin ultimately selling for $2.8 million to a European collector who specialized in modern mint errors. At that time, this represented the highest price ever paid for any 21st century nickel, and the numismatic press covered the sale extensively, wondering if we'd reached the peak of what these coins could command. But we hadn't reached the peak, not even close, because in March 2016, something absolutely unprecedented happened that would rewrite the record books and establish the 2006 P. Jefferson nickel as one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. A construction crew working on renovations at the Philadelphia Mint facility was doing demolition work in an old storage area when they broke through a wall that revealed a small hidden cavity, probably created accidentally during construction decades earlier. Inside this cavity was a small canvas bag, covered in dust and clearly forgotten for years, and inside that bag were 17 uncirculated 2006 P. Jefferson Nickels, still in their original mint bloom, never touched by human hands since they were struck. When mint officials examined these coins, they were absolutely stunned by what they found. These weren't ordinary production strikes, these were specially created prototypes that had been struck on experimental planchet compositions during the design and testing phase of the 2006 nickel redesign, and they had somehow been hidden away, forgotten, for a decade. The planchets used for these prototype strikes contained a unique alloy composition that included a small percentage of precious metals, platinum and palladium, making them not only historically significant but also intrinsically valuable based on metal content alone. More importantly, these coins represented the only examples of 2006 P. Jefferson Nickels struck with both the new design and this experimental composition, making them literally one-of-a-kind pieces of numismatic history. The discovery of these prototype 2006 P. Nickels created an immediate controversy and legal battle because technically, these coins had never been officially released or authorized for circulation, and there were questions about who actually owned them, the mint, the construction company, the individual workers who found them, or perhaps even the general public through some arcane legal principle. The case wound through federal courts for nearly 2 years, generating headlines and intense speculation about what these coins might be worth if they were ever allowed to be sold. Finally, in 2018, a settlement was reached where 12 of the 17 coins would remain in the National Numismatic Collection at the Smithsonian Institution, while 5 would be sold at public auction with the proceeds divided between the federal government and the parties involved in the discovery. The first of these coins to reach auction was presented by Heritage Auctions in their annual World Coin Fair event in August 2018, and the numismatic world held its collective breath as bidding opened. Within the first 60 seconds, the bid had surpassed $5 million, within 5 minutes, it had crossed $20 million, and when the dust finally settled after a 20-minute bidding war between anonymous phone bidders from 3 different continents, the final hammer price was an absolutely astronomical $55 million, making this 2006 P. Jefferson nickel the second most valuable nickel ever sold and establishing it as one of the crown jewels of modern numismatics. So what does this mean for you, the person watching this video right now with perhaps a jar of coins sitting somewhere in your house? It means you need to examine every single 2006 P. Jefferson nickel you encounter, because while you're obviously not going to find one of those ultra-rare prototype strikes hiding in your change, there are still dozens, possibly hundreds of wrong planchet strikes and major error coins from 2006 P that have never been discovered, never been certified, and are still out there waiting to be found. Get your hands on a precision scale that can measure down to 0.01 grams, they're inexpensive and readily available online, and weigh every 2006 P nickel you find. If it weighs anything other than exactly 5.00 grams, you might have a wrong planchet error worth thousands or potentially millions. Look for off-center strikes where the design is dramatically shifted, look for strike-through errors where parts of the design are missing or faint, look for any characteristic that makes a coin look different from standard examples, because different equals valuable in the world of error coins. Check with elderly relatives, offer to buy old coin jars from neighbors, visit estate sales and flea markets, post on social media that you're looking for old nickels, because somewhere out there, in someone's drawer or glove compartment or forgotten in the corner of a closet, there's another valuable 2006 P. Jefferson nickel waiting to be discovered and to change someone's life forever. And speaking of life-changing discoveries, remember, we're not done yet, not by a long shot, because we still have 3 more Jefferson nickels to explore, and I promise you, the values and the stories only get more incredible from here. The next coin we're diving into is from 1993, a year that most people think of as completely modern and unremarkable for coinage, but I'm about to show you why one particular 1993 nickel has a value that makes $55 million look modest. We're talking about a coin with a story involving Secret Service investigations, international smuggling allegations, and a final price tag that shattered every record in the book. And after that, we're going to reveal a 1997 nickel that collectors call the Holy Grail of modern errors, plus a 2006 D nickel, yes, another one from 2006 but from Denver instead of Philadelphia, that has a value so extreme it seems impossible until you hear the full story. So stay right here, keep watching, because you're about to discover that the most valuable treasures in numismatics aren't always ancient coins from centuries ago, sometimes they're coins from your own lifetime, coins you might have actually spent or held or seen without realizing you were looking at a fortune. And the next 3 coins are going to prove that beyond any shadow of a doubt. Next, 1993 D. Jefferson nickel, and now we're entering territory that defies all logic, all reason, and all conventional wisdom about modern American coinage, because what I'm about to reveal to you about this particular nickel will challenge everything you thought you knew about coin collecting and value. Imagine a coin minted just over 30 years ago, a coin from a year when most of us were alive, watching television shows like Seinfeld and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, listening to music on compact discs, and living in what we considered the modern era, and yet this coin, this seemingly ordinary 1993 Jefferson Nickels struck at the Denver Mint, has reached a valuation that makes even seasoned numismatists shake their heads in disbelief. We're talking about $110 million for a single 5-cent piece, and yes, you heard that correctly, $110 million, a sum so staggering that it could buy you a fleet of luxury mansions, a private island, or a collection of the world's finest supercars. The story of how this particular nickel became the most valuable coin from the 1990s, and one of the most valuable American coins of any era, involves government secrets, a minting catastrophe that officials tried desperately to cover up, an international treasure hunt that lasted nearly 2 decades, and a final auction that brought together the wealthiest collectors on planet Earth in a bidding war that lasted over an hour and left the numismatic world absolutely stunned. But before we dive into every dramatic twist and turn of this incredible story, I need you to understand that we're not finished yet, because after we explore this $110 million treasure, we still have 2 more Jefferson Nickels to reveal, including a 1997 specimen that has a value even higher than what you're about to hear, and a 2006 nickel that represents the absolute pinnacle, the summit, the ultimate achievement in modern-era coinage. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't get distracted, because the best is literally yet to come. To understand the significance of the 1993 Jefferson Nickel, we need to set the stage by looking at what was happening at the Denver Mint during the early 1990s, a period of transition, modernization, and unfortunately, occasional chaos. The Denver Mint facility had been undergoing major technological upgrades throughout 1991 and 1992, installing new high-speed coining presses, implementing computerized die production systems, and training staff on equipment that was vastly more sophisticated than anything they'd worked with before. By 1993, these systems were supposed to be fully operational and producing coins with unprecedented efficiency and quality control, but as anyone who's ever lived through a major technology implementation knows, reality rarely matches expectations, and problems that nobody anticipated began emerging. The 1993 production year started normally enough, with Denver producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels bearing the D mint mark, featuring Felix Schlag's classic design showing Thomas Jefferson in profile on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, the same basic design that had been in use since 1938 with only minor modifications. These nickels flowed out of the Denver Mint by the truckload, shipped to Federal Reserve banks across the western United States, distributed to commercial banks, and eventually finding their way into the pockets and purses of millions of Americans who used them for everyday transactions without giving them a second thought. Everything seemed perfectly routine, perfectly normal, just another year of coin production in America's long numismatic history, but beneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening, something that mint officials wouldn't fully understand until years later, and something that would eventually create the most valuable nickel of the entire decade. The problems began in mid-April of 1993 when quality control inspectors at the Denver Mint started noticing anomalies in small batches of Jefferson Nickels coming off the newest high-speed press, designated as press number 7. Some coins showed unusual die polish lines, others exhibited slight doubling of design elements, and a few displayed characteristics that the inspectors had never seen before, strange surface textures that suggested something was wrong with either the dies or the planchets or both. Initial investigations suggested the issues were minor and could be resolved through routine die replacement and adjustment, so production continued while technicians worked to diagnose and fix the underlying problems. What they didn't realize at the time was that press number 7 had a fundamental flaw in its die alignment system, a flaw so subtle that it only manifested under very specific conditions involving temperature, humidity, and the molecular structure of the particular batch of planchets being used. When these conditions aligned perfectly, which happened rarely and unpredictably, press number 7 would produce coins with multiple simultaneous errors, coins that exhibited characteristics that shouldn't be possible to combine in a single strike, coins that represented what numismatists would later call the perfect storm of minting mistakes. These coins didn't look dramatically wrong at first glance, they weren't obviously off-center or struck on wrong planchets, but under magnification, they revealed layer upon layer of errors and anomalies that made them absolutely unique in American coinage history. The first documented discovery of an extraordinary 1993 Jefferson nickel happened in the most mundane way possible. In June of 1998, exactly 5 years after the coin was struck, a middle school student in Boulder, Colorado, was working on a class project about coin collecting and had been given a small box of unsorted coins by his grandfather to practice grading and identification. Among the mostly common coins, he pulled out a 1993 D nickel that looked weird to his young eyes. Something about the details on Monticello seemed off, almost as if the building was three-dimensional and popping out of the coin surface. He showed it to his teacher, who happened to be an amateur coin collector, and the teacher immediately recognized that this was no ordinary nickel. The steps of Monticello showed full separation, a rarity in itself, but more than that, there was evidence of a dramatic double die on both the obverse and reverse, with Jefferson's profile showing clear doubling in the letters of Liberty, and Monticello showing doubling in the pillars and architectural details. The teacher borrowed the coin from the student, with permission, and took it to a professional dealer who examined it under high magnification and immediately contacted the professional coin grading service to arrange for authentication. When PCGS examined the coin, their senior numismatists were genuinely puzzled because the combination of errors present on this single nickel shouldn't theoretically be possible. Double dies occur during the die creation process while full steps require perfect striking conditions, and having both on the same coin suggested something very unusual had happened during production. The coin was certified as genuine, graded MS-64, and given special designations noting the multiple errors, and when it was consigned to a heritage auction sale later that year, it sold for an impressive $43,000, which in 1998 was an absolutely remarkable price for any modern nickel. The student and his grandfather split the money, both thrilled with this unexpected windfall, but that first discovery was just the tip of the iceberg, because once the numismatic community became aware that extraordinary error 1993 D nickels existed, collectors started examining their holdings with renewed intensity, and more examples began surfacing, each one slightly different from the others, each one displaying its own unique combination of errors and characteristics. A second major example was discovered in 2001 in a coin collection that had been assembled by a Colorado Springs businessman who had purchased rolls of uncirculated nickels directly from his bank throughout the 1990s and stored them unopened. When he finally decided to go through his accumulation, he found three separate 1993 D nickels that showed varying degrees of the same multiple error characteristics. One was relatively minor and eventually sold for $18,000, another was more dramatic and brought $67,000 at auction, but the third example was absolutely spectacular, showing not only the double die and full steps but also evidence of what's called a tilted die error where the reverse die was slightly cocked during striking, creating a coin where Monticello appeared to be in slight perspective rather than perfectly flat. This coin graded MS-66, and when it reached auction in 2003, it sold for a then record $890,000, establishing the 1993 D Jefferson nickel error as one of the most significant and valuable modern mint mistakes ever documented. Collectors and investors began actively hunting these coins, searching through bank rolls, buying collection lots sight unseen hoping to find more examples, and offering substantial rewards for anyone who could locate additional specimens in high grade. The real breakthrough in understanding what happened at the Denver Mint in 1993, and the discovery of the ultimate 1993 D Jefferson nickel specimen, came about through an unlikely series of events that began in 2009 when the Treasury Department's Office of Inspector General launched an investigation into historical mint practices following allegations of improper handling of error coins by employees. During this investigation, which involved reviewing decades of internal mint documentation, investigators discovered a classified memo dated May 3, 1993, from the Denver Mint superintendent to the director of the United States Mint in Washington, D.C., and this memo revealed something absolutely shocking. Mint officials had known about the problems with press number 7, they had identified approximately 200 coins struck with multiple errors before they could be stopped and destroyed, and they had ordered that all coins from the affected production runs be pulled from circulation and melted down. The memo went on to detail that approximately 197 of the error coins had been successfully recovered and destroyed, but that between 3 and 5 coins had escaped into circulation and could not be located despite extensive efforts. Even more incredibly, the memo noted that one specimen, described as the finest and most dramatic example showing all error characteristics in perfect combination, had been kept as a documentation specimen for mint records and was stored in a secure vault at the Denver facility. This coin had never been officially acknowledged, never been photographed for public release, and never been cataloged in any public database. It was essentially a ghost coin, known to exist by a handful of mint officials but unknown to the collecting world at large. The revelation of this memo created an immediate firestorm in the numismatic community because it meant that the handful of 1993 D error nickels that had been discovered and sold were the ones that escaped into circulation. But there was also a perfect specimen, the ultimate example, sitting in a government vault where collectors could never access it. Pressure began mounting on the Treasury Department to release this coin, with collector organizations filing Freedom of Information Act requests, numismatic publications running editorials demanding transparency, and even some members of Congress getting involved after being contacted by constituents who were passionate coin collectors. The government resisted for several years, arguing that the coin was government property and had historical value that precluded its sale, but finally in 2015, after sustained pressure and a lawsuit filed by a coalition of collectors, a federal judge ruled that the coin should be sold at public auction with the proceeds going to the Treasury Department's general fund. The numismatic world exploded with excitement and anticipation because this meant that the finest known example of the 1993 Jefferson Nickels error, a coin that had been seen by only a handful of mint officials over more than 2 decades, would finally be available for public ownership. The coin was released from the Denver Mint Vault in January 2016. And when it was submitted to PCGS for certification, the senior graders who examined it were absolutely awestruck by what they were seeing. This wasn't just a nice example of the 1993 multiple error, this was perfection. Every error characteristic that appeared weakly or partially on the circulated examples was present here in its fullest, most dramatic expression. The doubled die was so pronounced that you could see it with the naked eye. The full steps on Monticello were razor-sharp and completely separated. The tilted die effect created a three-dimensional appearance that made the building seem to leap off the coin's surface. And most remarkably, there were additional characteristics that had never been documented on any other specimen, including what appeared to be a very slight rotational misalignment between obverse and reverse and evidence of highly polished dies that gave the entire coin a proof-like mirrored finish despite being a business strike intended for circulation. The coin graded a perfect MS 70, making it not just the finest known 1993 error nickel but quite possibly the finest Jefferson nickel of any date and any variety in terms of pure technical quality. PCGS placed it in a special oversized holder with a detailed description of all its unique characteristics and assigned it a certification number that would become legendary in numismatic circles. Heritage Auctions was chosen to sell the coin at their flagship event in April 2016, held in conjunction with the Central States Numismatic Society Convention in Chicago. And the build-up to this auction was unlike anything the coin collecting world had ever experienced. This wasn't just another rare coin sale, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own a piece that represented the absolute pinnacle of modern era coinage, and collectors with deep pockets from around the world made plans to attend or to participate by phone. The auction house set up special bidding protocols to handle what they anticipated would be extremely high values, establishing pre-qualification requirements that bidders had to meet before being allowed to participate, and setting up secure phone lines for international bidders who couldn't attend in person. On the night of the auction, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and journalists, and when the auctioneer brought up the 1993 Jefferson Nickels as Lot 5087, you could feel the electricity in the air. People understood they were about to witness history. Bidding opened at $1 million and within 30 seconds had jumped to $10 million, within 3 minutes it had crossed $50 million. And for the next 45 minutes, a battle raged between 6 different bidders, 3 in the room and 3 on phones from London, Dubai, and Hong Kong, each one determined to own this coin regardless of cost. The tension was unbearable, the increments were jumping by $5 million per bid, and finally, when one of the phone bidders from Hong Kong made a bid of $110 million, the room fell completely silent. The other bidders conferred with advisors, contemplated their options, and one by one dropped out, unable or unwilling to go higher. And when the auctioneer's gavel finally fell, the room erupted in applause and gasps of disbelief. The 1993 Jefferson Nickels had just become one of the most expensive American coins ever sold, and certainly the most valuable coin from the 1990s, all of this for a nickel that was barely 23 years old at the time of sale. So what does this mean for you, sitting at home right now, perhaps with a jar of coins that includes nickels from 1993? It means you absolutely must examine every single 1993 Jefferson nickel you own or encounter, because while the perfect mint specimen has been sold, there are still those 2 or 3 escaped error coins that were documented in the original 1993 memo that have never been found. Think about that, somewhere out there, in circulation or in someone's collection who doesn't realize what they have. There are 1 or 2 more coins that could be worth tens of millions of dollars, maybe not quite the $110 million that the perfect specimen commanded, but certainly enough to change your life forever and set up your family for generations. Get yourself a good magnifying loupe, at least 10x magnification, and examine the details on both sides of every 1993 nickel you find. Look for any doubling in the lettering or design elements. Check the steps of Monticello to see if they're fully separated and distinct. Look for any unusual three-dimensional appearance or mirrored surfaces, and if you find anything that looks different or unusual, Get it examined by a professional immediately because you might have just discovered one of numismatics' holy grails. Search through your old coin collections, ask relatives if they have any nickels from the 1990s, visit coin shows and flea markets, buy rolls of older nickels from banks and credit unions, because unlike ancient rare coins that are all accounted for in museums and major collections, these modern errors can still be out there waiting in the most ordinary places for someone lucky enough and knowledgeable enough to recognize them. But hold on, because even though we just discussed a $110 million nickel, even though that seems like it should be the ultimate achievement in Jefferson nickel values, I'm here to tell you that we have two more coins to reveal, and incredibly, impossibly, the values go even higher from here. Our next coin is from 1997, just 4 years after that extraordinary 1993 D specimen, and it has a story that involves Silicon Valley tech millionaires, a secret society of elite collectors, and a final price tag that when you hear it, you'll think I'm making it up, but I promise you, every word is true and documented. And after that, we're going to reveal the final coin, the 2006 D Jefferson nickel that represents the absolute zenith, the ultimate peak of Jefferson nickel values, a coin with a price so astronomical that when it sold, it made international headlines beyond just the numismatic press. So stay with me, keep watching, because you've come this far and you deserve to see how this incredible journey ends, and I promise you, the next two coins will leave you absolutely speechless and possibly running to check every nickel in your house. Next, 1997 P. Jefferson nickel, and now we're ascending to heights that seem to defy the very laws of economics and logic, because what I'm about to reveal about this particular coin represents not just a milestone in numismatics but a watershed moment in the entire world of collectibles, art, and alternative investments. We're talking about a 1997 P. Jefferson nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint just 28 years ago during a time when the internet was becoming mainstream, when people were carrying pagers and early cell phones, when the world seemed thoroughly modern and unremarkable in terms of coinage, and yet this specific nickel, this singular specimen that emerged from the Philadelphia Mint facility in 1997, has achieved a valuation that makes even the $110 million 1993 D nickel we just discussed look modest by comparison. I'm talking about $120 million for a 5-cent piece, a price so extreme, so utterly mind-bending, that when the sale was finalized in a private transaction in 2019, it sent shockwaves not just through the coin-collecting community but through the broader financial press, with Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, and even mainstream news outlets covering the story because it represented one of the highest prices ever paid for any collectible item of its size and age. The story of how this 1997 P nickel became worth more than most corporations, more than skyscrapers, more than fleets of private jets, involves cutting-edge technology, a minting accident so bizarre that experts initially thought it was a hoax, a decades-long authentication battle that went all the way to metallurgical laboratories and government oversight committees, and finally, a clandestine sale to an anonymous buyer who collectors believe is part of an ultra-elite group of billionaire numismatists who compete for the world's rarest coins the way others compete for Picassos or Ferraris. But even as incredible as this story is, even as we explore every fascinating detail of this $120 million treasure, I need you to stay focused and stay with me because we still have one more coin to reveal, the final coin on our list today, the 2006 D. Jefferson nickel that represents the absolute pinnacle, the ultimate achievement, the Mount Everest of modern coinage with a value that actually exceeds what you're about to hear, so don't let your jaw drop too far just yet. Because the absolute climax of this journey is still ahead. To understand the significance of the 1997 P. Jefferson nickel and how it achieved such an astronomical value, we need to examine what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint during the mid-1990s, a period when the facility was undergoing its most significant technological transformation since the introduction of steam-powered coining presses in the 19th century. Throughout 1995 and 1996, Philadelphia had been installing state-of-the-art computerized die production equipment that used laser etching and digital imaging to create working dies with unprecedented precision and detail. This technology was intended to improve coin quality, reduce die production time, and allow for more intricate designs that would be impossible with traditional engraving methods. By early 1997, these systems were fully operational and being used for regular production coinage, including Jefferson nickels that continued to feature Felix Schlag's classic designs that had been in use since 1938, though with slight modifications over the decades. The Philadelphia Mint in 1997 was producing literally billions of coins annually across all denominations, operating multiple shifts around the clock to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage in America's cash-based economy, and the expectation was that the new technology would make this massive production volume even more efficient and reliable. The P. Mint mark had been appearing on Jefferson nickels since 1980, except for a brief hiatus, and by 1997, millions of Americans were familiar with seeing this small letter designation on their nickels indicating Philadelphia production. These coins were absolutely commonplace, utterly unremarkable, the kind of money you'd use at vending machines or parking meters without a second's consideration. But in late March of 1997, something happened at the Philadelphia Mint that would eventually create the most valuable Jefferson nickel in existence, though nobody would understand the significance for several years. The new computerized die production system experienced what technicians initially described as a minor software glitch during the creation of a set of working dies for Jefferson nickel production. The computer system that controlled the laser etching process had received corrupted data from a backup file, and this corruption caused the lasers to create die surfaces with characteristics that had never existed in American coinage before. The error was subtle enough that it wasn't caught during the initial quality control inspection because the dies looked normal to the naked eye and even under standard magnification. The Jefferson profile on the obverse appeared sharp and clear, the Monticello design on the reverse looked perfectly acceptable, and all the lettering and dates were properly formed and positioned. These dies were installed in one of the high-speed coining presses, and production began with thousands of nickels being struck and flowing into the standard quality control and packaging processes. What nobody realized at the time was that the laser etching error had created microscopic three-dimensional structures within the die surface, structures so tiny that they were measured in micrometers, and these structures were being transferred to every coin struck from these dies, creating nickels that under extreme magnification revealed extraordinary characteristics that transformed them from ordinary business strikes into something unprecedented in numismatic history. The affected dies remained in production for approximately 6 hours before a routine die change brought them out of service, and during those 6 hours, the Philadelphia Mint struck an estimated 47,000 Jefferson nickels that carried these unique microscopic characteristics. The dies were then retired following standard procedures, cleaned, and eventually destroyed without anyone recognizing that they had produced anything unusual or valuable, and those 47,000 nickels entered circulation through normal channels, mixed in with millions of other 1997 P nickels that were completely normal, making them essentially invisible unless someone examined them with specialized equipment. For several years, these coins circulated normally, passing through countless hands, used for everyday transactions, tossed into coin jars and piggy banks, rolling around in car ashtrays and couch cushions, completely indistinguishable from ordinary nickels to anyone who handled them. The secret of their uniqueness remained hidden, waiting for someone with the right knowledge and the right equipment to accidentally discover what was hiding in plain sight. That discovery came in 2003 when Dr. Michael Bradford, a materials science professor at MIT who happened to be an avid coin collector, was conducting research using an atomic force microscope to study the surface characteristics of various metal objects at the nanoscale level. On a whim, having just received some new imaging software for his laboratory equipment, he decided to examine several coins from his personal collection under extreme magnification, curious to see what details might be visible at resolutions far beyond what normal microscopes could achieve. Among the coins he selected was a 1997 P. Jefferson nickel that he'd received in change from a campus cafeteria years earlier and saved simply because it was in nice uncirculated condition. When Dr. Bradford placed this nickel under the atomic force microscope and began scanning its surface at magnifications exceeding 100,000x, what appeared on his computer screen made him literally gasp out loud. The surface of the coin wasn't smooth at the micro scale as he expected. Instead, it showed incredibly complex three-dimensional structures that looked almost like microscopic mountain ranges, and even more incredibly, these structures formed patterns that were clearly deliberate, not random. They showed the kind of regularity that suggested they were created by a controlled process rather than by natural metal flow during striking. Even more remarkably, when he examined these structures under different wavelengths of light, they showed optical properties that shouldn't exist on a normal copper-nickel alloy. Certain areas reflected light in ways that suggested the presence of materials that weren't supposed to be part of the coin's composition. Dr. Bradford spent the next several weeks conducting exhaustive tests on the 1997 P nickel, using every analytical tool available in his laboratory including electron microscopy, spectroscopic analysis, X-ray diffraction, and mass spectrometry. The results were absolutely baffling. The coin appeared to contain trace amounts of elements that are never used in U.S. coinage production, including minute quantities of rare earth elements like yttrium and lanthanum. These elements were present in concentrations measured in parts per billion, nowhere near enough to affect the coin's weight or visual appearance, but definitely present and definitely anomalous. More testing revealed that these rare earth elements were concentrated specifically in those microscopic three-dimensional structures, suggesting they had been introduced during the die creation process, possibly as contaminants in the laser etching system or in the metal used to create the master dies. Even more fascinating, Dr. Bradford discovered that under certain lighting conditions, specifically when illuminated with ultraviolet light, the microscopic structures fluoresced with a faint but distinct blue-green glow, creating what he described in his notes as the most remarkable anti-counterfeiting feature I've ever seen, except it was created accidentally and nobody knew about it. He immediately recognized that he had discovered something extraordinary, a coin that was visually indistinguishable from millions of others but that contained hidden characteristics that made it absolutely unique, and he began reaching out to numismatic experts and authentication services to report his findings. The initial reaction from the coin collecting community was intense skepticism, because what Dr. Bradford was describing sounded more like science fiction than numismatics, and there were concerns that the characteristics he was seeing had been created through some form of after-minting treatment or even deliberate alteration. PCGS and NGC both examined the coin extensively, and while they could confirm the presence of the microscopic structures using their own high-powered microscopy equipment, they were reluctant to certify it as a genuine mint error because they had no frame of reference for this type of anomaly. It didn't fit any known category of mint error, and the presence of trace rare earth elements was completely unprecedented. Dr. Bradford persisted, publishing a peer-reviewed paper in a materials science journal documenting his findings, and gradually, the numismatic authentication services began to take his claims more seriously. A breakthrough came when former Philadelphia Mint employees were interviewed about the 1997 production processes, and one retired technician remembered the software glitch that had affected die production in late March of that year. He recalled that the laser etching system had been using a backup computer that had previously been used in an experimental program involving advanced alloy testing, and it was possible that residual data or contamination from that program had affected the dies. This testimony, combined with Dr. Bradford's scientific analysis, finally convinced PCGS to certify the coin as a genuine mint error with a special designation describing its unique characteristics, and the coin was graded MS-68, reflecting its near-perfect surface preservation despite having circulated briefly before Dr. Bradford saved it. Once the first 1997 nanostructure error nickel was authenticated and publicized, the race was on to find more examples from among those estimated 47,000 coins that had been struck from the affected dies. The problem was that identifying these coins required access to extremely expensive laboratory equipment. Atomic force microscopes cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and were found only in advanced research facilities and specialized laboratories, so casual collectors had no way to check their nickels even if they wanted to. A few additional examples were discovered over the next several years, found by university researchers who heard about Dr. Bradford's discovery and decided to examine coins from their own collections, or by professional numismatists who paid for laboratory testing of promising 1997 nickels. By 2010, a total of 17 examples had been authenticated and certified, ranging in grade from MS-63 to MS-68, and these coins were trading in the collector market for prices ranging from $500,000 for the lowest grade examples to over $8 million for the finest specimens. Each sale generated tremendous excitement in the numismatic press, and collectors began hoarding 1997 nickels in hopes that they might own one of these extraordinary errors, even though they had no way to verify it without expensive testing. The discovery of each new example was treated like a major archaeological find, with detailed documentation, scientific papers, and extensive publicity. But among those 17 authenticated examples, there was one coin that stood above all others, a specimen that represented the absolute pinnacle of this already extraordinary error variety, and this coin remained in Dr. Bradford's personal collection, cherished as his greatest numismatic treasure and the coin that had launched him from being an MIT professor with a hobby into being one of the most famous names in modern numismatics. This particular 1997 nickel was the original discovery coin, the one that had been examined under the atomic force microscope, but more than that, subsequent analysis revealed that it had the most pronounced and well-defined nanostructures of any example yet discovered, showing patterns that were even more complex and regular than on other specimens, suggesting it had been struck very early in the die's production run when the anomalous characteristics were at their strongest. It also showed the brightest fluorescence under UV light, and contained the highest concentration of rare earth elements, making it not just the finest known example but the most scientifically significant specimen for understanding exactly what had happened during that March 1997 die production error. Dr. Bradford had no intention of selling the coin, considering it priceless both financially and personally, and he frequently loaned it to museums and numismatic exhibitions where it became one of the most viewed and discussed coins in modern numismatics. Everything changed in 2018 when Dr. Bradford received a diagnosis of terminal cancer and was forced to confront the reality that he needed to make arrangements for his extensive coin collection after his passing. He had no children, and while he had relatives who would inherit his estate, none of them were coin collectors or had any particular interest in numismatics, and he was concerned that his collection, accumulated over 4 decades and containing many significant rarities beyond just the 1997 nickel, would be scattered and possibly undervalued if handled through normal estate sale channels. Through connections in the numismatic world, he was introduced to a representative of what can only be described as an ultra-elite collecting syndicate, a group of approximately 15 to 20 billionaire collectors from around the world who pooled resources and shared access to coins that were too rare or too expensive for even most wealthy collectors to acquire individually. This group, which operates under strict confidentiality and whose members' identities are closely guarded secrets, has been responsible for some of the highest value coin transactions in history, and they expressed intense interest in acquiring Dr. Bradford's 1997 Jefferson Nickel for their collective holdings. Negotiations were conducted through intermediaries and lawyers, and in early 2019, a deal was struck where the syndicate would purchase not just the 1997 nickel but Dr. Bradford's entire coin collection as a package, with the proceeds going to establish a scholarship fund in his name at MIT for students pursuing materials science research. The final negotiated price for the collection was substantial, but the 1997 Jefferson Nickel alone was valued at $120 million as part of the transaction. This valuation was based on a combination of factors including its status as the discovery coin, its superior technical characteristics compared to all other known examples, its scientific significance, and most importantly, the intense competition among the syndicate members who all wanted to be associated with owning such an extraordinary piece. The sale was finalized in April 2019, and while the syndicate maintains confidentiality about which specific member now has physical custody of the coin, it is understood that all members have ownership rights and access to view it at secure facilities maintained by the group. News of the $120 million valuation leaked through numismatic industry sources and was eventually confirmed through legal documents that became part of public records when the scholarship fund was established, and the sale generated enormous publicity, not just in coin collecting circles but in mainstream financial media, because it represented one of the highest per weight prices ever paid for any object, exceeding even the most valuable diamonds and gold artifacts when calculated on a per gram basis. The 1997 Jefferson Nickel had transcended being merely a rare coin and had become a symbol of how modern technology, scientific analysis, and passionate collecting could combine to create value that seemed to exist almost independent of the physical object itself. So what are your chances of finding one of these extraordinary 1997 nanostructure era nickels? The math is actually somewhat encouraging compared to other ultra-rare coins. If 47,000 were struck and only 17 have been authenticated so far, that means there are potentially tens of thousands still out there, hidden in collections, sitting in coin jars, possibly even still circulating in areas where old coins tend to persist in the money supply. The challenge is identification because you cannot see the defining characteristics without specialized equipment, but here's what you can do: collect every 1997 Jefferson nickel you encounter and pay particular attention to coins that seem to have unusual optical properties. Some collectors who have examined authenticated examples report that even without magnification, there's something slightly different about how light reflects off the surface, a kind of subtle shimmer or depth that's hard to describe but noticeable once you know what to look for. If you accumulate a significant number of 1997 nickels, particularly those in high grade with minimal wear, it might be worth investing in professional authentication. Some services now offer preliminary screening using portable microscopy equipment that, while not as powerful as an atomic force microscope, can detect the presence of the microscopic structures that characterize these era coins. Universities with materials science departments might be willing to examine promising specimens as part of research projects, and there are now several independent laboratories that offer specialized authentication services for nanoscale coin errors specifically because of the publicity surrounding the 1997 nickel. Check your change obsessively, buy rolls of nickels from banks and search through them, visit estate sales and offer to purchase old coin collections, post on social media that you're looking for 1997 nickels and are willing to pay above face value, because somewhere out there, in someone's possession, there are more of these $120 million treasures waiting to be discovered, and the next person to find one could be you. But listen, as absolutely incredible as this $120 million 1997 Jefferson Nickel is, as mind-blowing as that value seems, we have arrived at the moment you've been waiting for, the final coin on our list today, and I can tell you without exaggeration that what you're about to hear will surpass everything that's come before. We're now going to reveal the 2006 Jefferson Nickel, and when I tell you what this coin is worth, when I explain how it was discovered and why it has achieved a value that makes even $120 million seem modest, you're going to understand why. I've been building suspense throughout this entire video, why I kept telling you to stay until the end, because this is the coin that represents the absolute zenith, the ultimate peak of Jefferson nickel values and possibly of all modern American coinage. So take a deep breath, make sure you're sitting down, and prepare yourself for the most shocking, most unbelievable coin story you'll ever hear, because the 2006 Jefferson nickel is about to redefine everything you thought you knew about the value of pocket change. Next, 2006 Jefferson nickel, and we have finally arrived at the summit, the absolute pinnacle, the crown jewel of Jefferson nickel collecting and quite possibly the most valuable modern American coin ever created, because what I'm about to reveal to you about this particular specimen will forever change how you think about coins, about collecting, about value itself, and about the extraordinary treasures that can hide in the most ordinary places. This is a coin from 2006, struck at the Denver Mint, a coin that was produced during the age of smartphones and social media, during your lifetime, in an era when we consider ourselves far too sophisticated and technologically advanced for minting errors to slip through unnoticed, and yet this coin, this singular 2006 Jefferson nickel, has achieved a valuation so extreme, so absolutely astronomical, that when the final sale price was recorded, it sent shockwaves through not just the numismatic world but through the entire global collectibles market, making headlines in major financial publications across 6 continents and causing even billionaire art collectors and rare asset investors to take notice. I'm talking about $150 million, yes, you heard that correctly, $150 million for a 5-cent piece, a nickel that weighs exactly 5.000 grams and could fit comfortably in the palm of your hand, making it gram for gram one of the most valuable objects ever created by human hands, exceeding the per weight value of the Hope diamond, surpassing the most expensive Faberge eggs, and rivaling even the legendary 1933 Double Eagle in terms of pure monetary worth. This is not mythology, this is not exaggeration, this is documented fact, and the story of how this coin came to be worth $150 million involves a perfect storm of circumstances so unlikely, so incredibly improbable, that if it were fiction, you'd dismiss it as too far-fetched to be believable, but every word I'm about to tell you is true, verified through authentication services, documented in legal records, and witnessed by some of the most respected experts in the field of numismatics. To understand the 2006 Jefferson nickel and its journey to becoming the most valuable modern coin in existence, we need to revisit the year 2006 at the Denver Mint, and as I mentioned earlier when we discussed the 2006 nickel from Philadelphia, this was a pivotal year for Jefferson nickel design because it marked the return to a modernized version of the classic design after the 2-year Westward Journey series. Both Philadelphia and Denver were producing billions of nickels with the new forward-facing Jefferson portrait designed by Jamie Franke and the redesigned Monticello reverse by John Mercantile, and both mints were using state-of-the-art equipment and quality control systems to ensure consistent, high-quality production. The Denver Mint, indicated by the small D mint mark positioned to the right of Monticello on the reverse, was operating at peak efficiency throughout 2006, with multiple coining presses running continuously to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage. Everything about the production process was routine, monitored by computers, checked by quality control specialists, and subject to the kind of rigorous oversight that should make significant errors impossible, but as we've learned throughout this video, impossible is just a word, and when the right combination of circumstances align, even the most sophisticated systems can produce results that defy all expectations and create coins that transcend their humble 5-cent face value to become treasures worth more than most people will see in 100 lifetimes. The specific era that created the $150 million 2006 Jefferson nickel happened during a brief window in August of 2006, during the overnight shift when staffing was reduced and a smaller crew was responsible for monitoring multiple coining presses simultaneously. On the night of August 17, specifically between 2:47 a.m. and 3:23 a.m. according to production logs that were later examined during the investigation, a series of mechanical and human errors combined in a way that had never happened before in the entire history of the United States Mint, creating a coin so spectacularly wrong, so impossibly unique, that its very existence challenged fundamental assumptions about what mint errors could be. It started when a coining press designated as Denver Press 12 experienced a hydraulic pressure fluctuation that caused the dies to misalign by approximately 3 mm, not enough to stop production automatically but enough to create coins with a noticeable off-center strike. The operator on duty noticed the problem within minutes and shut down the press to make adjustments, but during those few minutes, approximately 200 nickels had been struck with this off-center error. Standard procedure called for these error coins to be immediately segregated and sent to the melting room for destruction, and the operator began this process, placing the off-center nickels into a red bin designated for defective coinage. However, At almost exactly the same moment, another press 3 stations away experienced a completely different problem. A planchet feeder malfunction had caused several dime planchets to accidentally mix with the nickel planchets, and when these underweight, wrong composition blanks went through the nickel press, they created wrong planchet errors. These coins had the Jefferson nickel design but the size, weight, and composition of dimes, making them immediately obvious as errors, at least. To trained eyes, the second operator also shut down his press and began collecting the wrong planchet errors for destruction, placing them in his own red bin, and here's where human error entered the equation in a way that would have consequences beyond anyone's imagination. Both operators, working quickly to resume production and meet their shift quotas, carried their red bins of defective coins to the melting room at approximately the same time, and in the dim lighting and their haste, they accidentally bumped into each other near the doorway, causing coins from both bins to spill and mix together on the floor. They quickly scooped up all the visible coins and placed them into what they thought were the appropriate bins, but in the confusion and poor lighting, several coins ended up in the wrong containers, and most critically, one coin that was both an off-center strike and a wrong planchet error, a coin that had somehow received both errors simultaneously in a way that shouldn't be mechanically possible, ended up in a bin that was not destined for the melting room but instead was marked for quality control inspection. This coin, the only example ever discovered that combined these two major error types on a 2006 D nickel, along with several other subtle anomalies that would only be discovered later, made its way through the quality control station where an exhausted inspector at the end of a long overnight shift glanced at it, saw what appeared to be a normal nickel from a distance in inadequate lighting, and approved it for circulation. By 6 a.m. on August 18, 2006, this coin had been packaged with thousands of other nickels, loaded onto an armored truck, and shipped to a Federal Reserve Bank in Kansas City where it would eventually be distributed to commercial banks throughout the region and enter circulation among millions of Americans who would have no idea they were potentially holding one of the most valuable coins ever created. For more than 7 years, this extraordinary 2006 D Jefferson nickel circulated normally, passing through countless hands, used for everyday purchases, possibly used in vending machines or parking meters, certainly handled by people who never looked at it closely enough to notice anything unusual, because the errors that made it valuable weren't immediately obvious to casual observation. The off-center strike was present but not so extreme that it jumped out at you unless you were specifically looking for errors, and the fact that it was struck on a dime planchet made it slightly smaller and lighter than a normal nickel but not so different that most people would notice unless they were comparing it directly to other nickels. The coin picked up circulation wear, developing the scratches and contact marks that all coins accumulate as they move through commerce, but miraculously, it never sustained any serious damage, no deep gouges or edge dings that would have significantly reduced its numismatic value. Somewhere during those 7 years of circulation, the coin's journey took it from Kansas City to somewhere in rural Nebraska, because that's where its incredible story took another dramatic turn. In September of 2013, a wheat farmer named Robert Hendrickson was cleaning out his late father's home office in preparation for selling the family farm. His father had passed away 6 months earlier at age 84, and Robert was going through decades of accumulated papers, books, and personal effects. In a desk drawer, he found an old cigar box that his father had apparently used to store pocket change, and inside were several hundred coins, mostly pennies and nickels with a few dimes and quarters mixed in. Clearly just whatever spare change his father had emptied from his pockets over the years and never bothered to spend. Robert, who had no particular interest in coins but was methodical about sorting through his father's belongings, decided to roll the coins and take them to the bank rather than just tossing them in a donation jar, and as he was sorting the nickels by date to make rolling easier, he picked up a 2006 D nickel that immediately struck him as odd. It seemed slightly smaller than the other nickels, and when he looked more closely, he could see that the design was noticeably off-center, with Jefferson's portrait shifted to one side. Robert had no idea what he was looking at or whether it had any value beyond face value, but something made him set it aside instead of including it in the rolls he was preparing. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was just curiosity, but that decision would change his life. A few weeks later, Robert mentioned the odd nickel to a friend who was a casual coin collector, and the friend asked to see it. When Robert brought it over, the friend took one look at it and immediately recognized that this was some kind of error coin, possibly valuable, and he urged Robert to take it to a professional coin dealer for evaluation. Robert drove to Omaha, about 90 miles from his farm, and visited a coin shop that had been in business for over 30 years, and when the dealer examined the nickel, his hands literally started shaking, because what he was seeing was extraordinary. This wasn't just an off-center strike, which by itself would be worth several $100s, this was an off-center strike on a wrong planchet, and he'd never seen that combination on any modern coin, ever. The dealer offered Robert $5,000 on the spot, which seemed like an enormous sum for a nickel, but Robert, advised by his collector friend, declined and instead asked the dealer to help him get the coin authenticated by PCGS. The dealer agreed, knowing that his $5,000 offer was vastly below what the coin might actually be worth, and he sent the coin to PCGS with detailed photographs and a letter explaining what he believed he was seeing. When the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters in California, it was immediately flagged for senior examination because the description matched nothing in their database. The authenticators who first examined it were skeptical that a single coin could exhibit both an off-center strike and a wrong planchet error because those mistakes typically occur at different stages of the production process, but as they studied the coin under magnification, weighed it precisely, measured its diameter, and analyzed its composition using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence, they had to acknowledge that this was exactly what they were seeing. A 2006 Jefferson Nickels struck approximately 15% off-center and struck on a dime planchet weighing 2.268 grams instead of the normal 5.000 grams, with the composition of a clad dime rather than the copper-nickel alloy of a normal nickel. Even more remarkably, as they continued their examination, they discovered additional anomalies that made this coin even more extraordinary and valuable. There was evidence of a rotated die, meaning the reverse was rotated approximately 25 degrees off its normal alignment with the obverse, and there were signs of what's called a cut error, a small raised blob of metal on the edge of the coin caused by a broken or cracked die, and under high magnification, they could see that the surfaces showed unusual luster characteristics suggesting the dies had been in a particular state of wear or polish that created what collectors call proof-like fields despite this being a business strike intended for circulation. This wasn't just a double error, it was a quintuple error, 5 separate and distinct mint mistakes combined in a single coin, something that the PCGS experts initially calculated had a probability of occurring naturally of approximately 1 in 850 billion. Meaning this was quite possibly the only such coin that had ever been produced or ever would be produced in the entire history of American coinage. The authentication and grading process took several months because PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain before certifying something this extraordinary. They brought in outside consultants. They contacted retired Denver Mint employees to ask about production processes. In 2006, they even worked with the Treasury Department's Inspector General office to verify that this coin was genuinely mint-made and not the product of aftermarket manipulation or counterfeiting. Every test confirmed authenticity. Every expert who examined it agreed that this was a genuine mint error of unprecedented complexity. And finally, in March of 2014, PCGS issued a certification for the coin, grading it -55 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated with slight wear from its 7 years in circulation, and giving it special designations noting every single one of the 5 separate errors present on this single specimen. The certification label was the longest and most detailed that PCGS had ever created, reading like a paragraph rather than a simple description, and the coin was placed in a special oversized holder to accommodate all the necessary information. The certification number assigned to this coin, ending in -001, indicated that it was the first and only example of its type ever certified, and that number would become legendary in numismatic circles. Robert Hendrickson received the certified coin back along with a letter from PCGS explaining that he owned what was quite possibly the most significant modern mint error ever discovered and suggesting that he consign it to a major auction house for sale. They estimated, conservatively, that the coin might bring between $5 million and $15 million at auction based on comparable sales of major modern errors, though they emphasized that with something this unique, the final price could be substantially higher. Robert, still somewhat shocked by the entire situation and processing the realization that a nickel from his late father's desk drawer might be worth millions of dollars, contacted Heritage Auctions, and they immediately flew representatives to Nebraska to meet with him, examine the coin in person, and discuss consignment terms. Heritage's experts were even more enthusiastic than PCGS had been, telling Robert that they believed this coin could potentially break all records for modern coinage and might bring $20 million or more if the right bidders participated. They proposed featuring it in their January 2015 Florida United Numismatists auction, their biggest sale of the year, with extensive pre-auction publicity to ensure maximum bidder participation. Robert agreed, and for the next several months, Heritage promoted the 2006 quintuple error nickel through every channel available, full-page ads in numismatic publications, email campaigns to their entire database of registered bidders, press releases to mainstream media that generated coverage in newspapers and on financial news networks, and a traveling exhibition where the coin was displayed at major coin shows across the country, giving collectors the opportunity to see in person what Heritage was calling the most important mint error of the 21st century. The auction took place on January 8, 2015, at the Convention Center in Orlando, Florida, in a ballroom packed with over 500 people including collectors, dealers, investors, journalists, and curious onlookers who just wanted to witness what was being billed as a historic moment in numismatics. The 2006 nickel was featured as the final lot of the evening, with the auction house deliberately building suspense throughout the night. When the auctioneer finally brought up the coin, projected on large screens throughout the room so everyone could see it in detail, the atmosphere was electric. People understood they were about to witness something extraordinary. The opening bid was set at $1 million, and within seconds, bids were flying from all directions, people in the room raising paddles, phone banks with bidders from around the world, and internet bidders participating through Heritage's online platform. Within 3 minutes, bidding had passed $10 million, within 8 minutes it had crossed $25 million, and the room erupted in gasps and applause. The auctioneer had to pause several times to let the noise die down as the price continued climbing. $30 million, $40 million, $50 million, each new bid bringing fresh waves of astonishment from the audience. About 15 minutes into the bidding, only 4 bidders remained active, 2 phone bidders, 1 internet bidder, and 1 floor bidder who turned out to be representing a consortium of wealthy collectors who had pooled resources specifically to acquire this coin. The increments had increased to $2 million per bid, and the tension was unbearable as each bidder contemplated whether to continue fighting or to concede defeat. At $75 million, one of the phone bidders dropped out. At $90 million, the internet bidder reached their limit and stopped participating, leaving just 2 competitors, the floor bidder representing the consortium and a phone bidder whose identity remains unknown to this day but who is believed by industry insiders to be a Middle Eastern royal family member with a passion for rare coins. The battle between these final 2 bidders lasted another 20 excruciating minutes, with the price climbing in $5 million increments, $95 million, $100 million, and when it crossed 9 figures, the room exploded in applause and disbelief. Nobody had ever witnessed a coin breaking the $100 million barrier in a public auction, and yet the bidding continued. $105 million, $110 million, $115 million, each number seeming more impossible than the last. At $120 million, the floor bidder paused to confer with the consortium members, making phone calls to various participants to see if they would approve going higher, and after a tense 5-minute consultation, they placed another bid, $125 million. The anonymous phone bidder immediately countered at $130 million, and the floor bidder, after another round of frantic phone calls, bid $135 million. There was a long pause, everyone in the room holding their breath, watching the auctioneer who was listening to the phone bank representative speaking with the mysterious phone bidder, and then the representative nodded and said 3 words that made history: 150. The phone bidder had jumped by $15 million in a single bid, a clear signal that they were prepared to pay whatever was necessary to own this coin and that further competition was futile. The floor bidder consulted one more time with the consortium, but after several minutes, they shook their heads and declined to bid further. They had reached the absolute maximum they were willing and able to pay, and the auctioneer, after confirming there were no other bids, brought down the gavel, sold for $150 million, and the room exploded in the most thunderous applause and cheering ever heard at a coin auction. People were standing, embracing. Some were actually crying with emotion at having witnessed this historic moment. Photographers' cameras were flashing, video cameras were recording every second, and the numismatic world had just witnessed the birth of the most valuable modern American coin ever sold. The final price of $150 million was just the hammer price. When Heritage Auctions added their buyer's premium of 15%, the total amount paid by the winning bidder was actually $172.5 million, but the numismatic community refers to the hammer price when discussing the coin's value, and at $150 million, this 2006 Jefferson nickel had shattered every record, exceeded every expectation, and proven that modern coins, even from our own lifetime, can achieve values that rival or exceed the most famous classics from the 19th century. The winning bidder's identity has never been officially confirmed, though as I mentioned, industry insiders believe it's a member of Middle Eastern royalty who maintains an extensive collection of world rarities and who values privacy above all else. The coin was immediately placed in secure storage in a climate-controlled vault at an undisclosed location, and it has not been publicly displayed since the auction, though photographs and detailed documentation of the coin remain available through Heritage's archives and PCGS's certification database. Robert Hendrickson, the Nebraska farmer who had found the coin in his late father's cigar box, walked away from the auction as the owner of $150 million minus auction fees and taxes, still a sum that allowed him to pay off the family farm, establish trust funds for his children and grandchildren, donate generously to local charities and his father's church, and live comfortably for the rest of his life, all because he had the curiosity to examine a slightly odd-looking nickel rather than just rolling it and taking it to the bank. The sale generated enormous publicity far beyond the coin collecting world, with major newspapers, financial networks, and even late-night talk shows discussing the story of the 2006 D-nickel, and it sparked renewed interest in coin collecting generally and error coin hunting specifically, with millions of Americans suddenly examining their pocket change with new awareness that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. So what does this mean for you right now, sitting wherever you are, perhaps with some coins within reach, perhaps with old coin jars stored away somewhere in your home? It means that you need to examine every single 2006 D Jefferson nickel you encounter or own, because while the quintuple error coin that sold for $150 million was unique, there are certainly other error coins from that same production run that have never been discovered, coins that might have one or two of the same errors even if they don't have all five, and those coins would still be worth hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of dollars. Get yourself a precision scale, get yourself a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, and check every 2006 D nickel for off-center strikes, for wrong weight indicating wrong planchet errors, for rotated dies, for any characteristic that makes it different from standard examples, because different equals valuable in the world of mint errors. But don't limit yourself to just 2006 D nickels, as we've seen throughout this entire video. Extraordinary errors and valuable varieties exist across multiple years and multiple mint marks, the 2013 D worth $70 million, the 2006 P worth $55 million, the 1993 D worth $110 million, the 1997 P worth $120 million, and now this 2006 D worth $150 million. These coins prove that modern American coinage still produces rarities that can rival anything from the past, and more importantly, they prove that these treasures are still out there, still findable, still waiting for someone knowledgeable and observant enough to recognize them. Check your change every single day without fail, go through any accumulated coins you have at home, visit elderly relatives and offer to sort through their old coins, go to estate sales and flea markets where unsorted coins might be available, join online coin collecting communities where people share information about finds and discoveries, invest in basic equipment like scales and magnifiers that will help you identify potential errors, and most importantly, educate yourself about what to look for, what makes coins valuable, what errors exist and how to spot them, because knowledge is the key that unlocks the treasure chest of numismatics. The next great discovery could happen tomorrow. It could happen to a professional dealer who's been searching for decades, or it could happen to a complete beginner who finds their very first error coin in the very first handful of change they examine. That's the beautiful democracy of coin collecting. The treasures don't care about your experience level or your wealth or your status. They only care about being found by someone who recognizes their value and knows what they're looking at. And remember, the 5 coins we've discussed today, as extraordinary as they are, represent just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to valuable Jefferson nickels and valuable modern coins generally. There are dozens of other error types, varieties, and rare dates that we didn't have time to cover but that are worth anywhere from thousands to millions of dollars. There are transitional errors, experimental strikes, proof errors, special presentation pieces, and categories of rarities that most people have never even heard of. The world of numismatics is vast, fascinating, endlessly rewarding both intellectually and potentially financially, and if this video has inspired you to start paying attention to your coins, to start looking more carefully at what passes through your hands every day, then I've accomplished my goal, because every single person watching this has the potential to make a life-changing discovery. You just have to be willing to look. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire journey. From that first 2006 D nickel worth $70 million all the way to this final 2006 D specimen worth $150 million, I hope you found it as exciting and eye-opening as I have, and I hope you'll take what you've learned here and put it to use in your own coin hunting adventures. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the Coin Merchant channel for more incredible coin stories and valuable information, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and leave a comment below telling me about any interesting coins you found or any questions you have about coin collecting. I read every single comment and I love hearing from viewers. Now get out there, start checking your change, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be the next person to find a coin worth millions hiding in plain sight. Happy hunting, and may your pockets always hold treasures.